Hey Algebra 1, and thanks for tuning in. Today we're going to be looking at lesson 9.4, how to complete the square, and we're going to be looking for 8 things to write down in our notes, so let's go and get started. First thing we want to write down is how to complete the square. So there are 3 steps that we'll use to complete the square. And this only works for if the expression is in x squared plus bx form. So what we would do first is we would find half of b, which is always going to be the coefficient of just x. And then we're going to square that result from step 1, and then we'll add the result from step 2 back to the x squared plus bx. Once you get to step 3, then you're going to realize that you can factor that expression, which is going to be in standard form, as the square of a binomial, because it's going to meet the standards of factoring those perfect squares. Another way to think about it is just this algebra expression, which is again explaining steps 1, 2, and 3, but really you'll need to write down these 3 steps. Let's go ahead and take time now to pause the video and write down steps 1, 2, and 3, and once you're done, click play to see how it's done. So the first 2 we're going to look at just how do we exactly do this. The first step in your note said find 1/2 of b, and so this one is half of b is 3, and what we do is we just square 3 to make it 9. So now what we're going to do, that was step 2, we're going to add that result back to this, so we'll get x squared plus 6x plus 9. And then we can go ahead and factor the expression as a square of a binomial. This is a perfect square special where you're basically looking at what factors of 9 multiplied together that would add to 6x. That'd be 3 and 3. So I would have x plus 3 times x plus 3, which can be written as x plus 3 to the second power. And that's all we have to do here. So for instance, in letter B, we would do the same thing. We would take half of b, which is, so that's -9, take a half of it. So I would just write it as -9/2 first and square it, and we would get 81/4. And we're going to add that back to the problem. So we'll have x squared minus 9x plus 81/4. And this one's a little bit tricky because you got to think about now, okay, well, what factors of 81/4 can be added together to make -9? And that's going to be -9/2. So I have x minus 9/2 times x minus 9/2, or 4.5, which then would give you the result of x minus 9/2 to the second power. Okay, so we're going to try the next 2. Next 3. And I'm going to get you to try these on your own. So let's go ahead and pause the video so you can try questions 2, 3, and 4 in your notes. And once you're done, click play to check your work. Alright, so for number 2, the half of 10 is 5, and 5 squared is going to give me 25. So I'm going to add that back to the original problem. X squared plus 10x plus 25. And then my factored version would be x plus 5 times x plus 5, which is x plus 5 squared. In number 3, the half of -4 is -2, and -2 squared is 4. So I'm just going to add that back to my binomial. So I'll have x squared minus 4x plus 4. And then factoring that, I'm going to get x minus 2 times x minus 2, which is x minus 2 squared. The last one, number 4, when we factor this one, half of 7 is 7/2, and then 7/2 squared is 49/4. So we're going to add that back to the binomial. X squared plus 7x plus 49/4. And then you're doing your perfect square special, so that'd be x plus 7/2 times x plus 7/2. You're basically just finding the square root of the last number, or c. So that means my answer is x plus 7/2 squared. Okay, so these have been pretty easy. The next thing we're going to look at is this. What happens when not everything is on the same side? Well, in this case, what we would do, we would still find the perfect square, and we would still follow the same steps, but now we just have something on the other side of that. So now we're going to solve by completing the square. The first thing I'm going to do is still do the same steps. Find 1/2 of b, so -16 cut in half is -8. and negative 8 squared is 64. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 64, but when I do that, I'm going to have to add 64 to both sides of my equation just to balance it. So I'm going to have x squared minus 16x plus 64 is equal to negative 15 plus 64. That's going to give me 49. Okay, then I'm going to factor it. So factoring on the left side, I would get x minus 8 times x minus 8, which is x minus 8 squared, is equal to 49. Okay, once I'm done factoring it, then I'm going to solve. And notice how x minus 8 is squared. So what I need to do to get rid of that squared is find the square root of both sides. So x minus 8 squared, and the square root of that would be x minus 8. And then the square root of 49, you can have a positive or a negative 7. So now what I'm going to do is just set both of these equal to positive and negative 7. So x minus 8 is equal to 7, x minus 8 is equal to negative 7. And then I'll just solve. Over here, x is equal to 15, and over here, x is equal to 1. So these would be my two solutions for these. Another thing we might want to consider too is what happens when I need to do some factoring or dividing first before I can actually start solving. Notice there's nothing on the right hand side, so my very first step is I'm going to move that to the right hand side, the minus 8. So I'll have 2x squared plus 20x equals 8. And then another thing I want to do here is make sure I'm in the form of x squared plus bx. And right now I have 2x squared plus bx. So my main goal is to get x squared by itself. So I'm going to divide everything by 2 to get x squared plus 10x is equal to 4. So now I'm ready to rock and roll just like I did in the previous one. I'm going to take half of 10x, which is 5, and 5 squared is 25. So I'm going to add 25 to both sides. So plus 25 on the left side, and 4 plus 25 is going to give me 29. To factor this trinomial, x squared plus 10x plus 25, it would just be x plus 5 squared is equal to 29. And then we're just continuing what we saw before. Go ahead and find the square root of both sides. So I have x plus 5 is equal to the positive and negative square root of 29. And if you type this into your calculator, it's going to give you about 5.39. So we're going to say x plus 5 is equal to the positive and negative 5.39. And then we can go ahead and plug in both of these to see what my answer would be. So x plus 5 is equal to positive 5.39. That's going to give us one answer of 0.39. And then x plus 5 is equal to negative 5.39. That's going to give us an answer of negative 10.39. Okay, so those are my two answers for this example. So in this case, I still had to get in the form of x squared plus bx, so there's just two extra steps I had to do here, but still following the same exact thing you saw on the previous page. So let's go and try 5, 6, and 7. It says round your solutions to nearest hundredth if necessary, so whenever you get to a square root that's not perfect, just make sure you're rounding to the hundredths place. So let's go ahead and pause here, try these on your own, and once you're done, click play. Alright, so what I did for number 5 is I added 1 to both sides because that's half of 2, and half of 2 is 1, 1 squared is 1. So I'll have x squared minus 2x plus 1 is equal to 3 plus 1, which is 4. X squared minus 2x plus 1 is the binomial x minus 1 squared. And then I found the square root of both. So x minus 1 is equal to positive and negative 2. So then we set x minus 1 is equal to 2, x minus 1 is equal to negative 2. And then I'm just going to solve both sides here. X is equal to 3, and x is equal to negative 1. For number 6, again, go ahead and solve half of 12m, which is 6. So that would be m squared plus 12m plus 36. And then negative 8 plus 36 is going to give you 28. Go ahead and make my little line here. And then the squared binomial would be m plus 6 is equal to 28. And then finding the square root of both sides would be m plus 6 is equal to the square root of 28. The square root of 28 is about 5.29 after you round it. And that is positive, negative. So now we've just set these both equal to positive and negative 5.29. So m plus 6 is equal to 5.29. That's going to give me m is equal to 11.29. And then m plus 6 is equal to negative 5.29. That would give me, that first one should not have been 11.29. That one's going to give me negative 0.71. And then when I subtract 6 from here, then I'll get the negative 11.29. So these would be my two solutions for number 6. And then number 7, this one is the one that I showed you, the second set, where we have to get it in the form of x squared plus bx is equal to 0. So I'm going to add or subtract 27 from both sides first. So I have 3g squared minus 24g is equal to negative 27. Divide all things by 3 to get that g squared just to equal 1. So I have g squared minus 8g is equal to negative 9. And then what I'm going to do is go ahead and find half of 8, which is 4. 4 squared is 16, so I'm going to add 16 to both sides. G squared minus 8g plus 16 is equal to negative 9 plus 16. That's going to give you 7. And then g minus 4 squared is equal to 7. Find the square root of both sides. So I'm going to have g minus 4, and then the square root of 7 is about 2.65, so positive, negative 2.65. And then when you solve for both positive and negative, you would get g is equal to 6.65, or g is equal to 1.35. Okay. The last thing we're going to talk about is how to find a minimum or a maximum. So what we're going to have to do here is go ahead and try to get them back still in the x squared plus bx form. And this kind of goes along with what we talked about in chapter 8 in vertex form and finding your vertex. What I'm going to do first is get this minus 1 away from these so I can complete this square. So I'm going to add 1 over here to y. So now I have y plus 1 is equal to x squared plus 4x. Next, what I'm going to do is complete the square. Half of 4x is 2, so 2 squared is 4, so I'm going to add 4 to both sides. So that would be y plus 5 is equal to x squared plus 4x plus 4. And then go ahead and write your factored version, x plus 2 squared. And then I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides to put it in vertex form. So I get y is equal to, parentheses, x plus 2 squared minus 5. So this, again, is vertex form, back from chapter 8. Okay, which means my vertex, reminder, is h comma k. So that would be negative 2 comma negative 5, which means my minimum value is equal to negative 5. Okay, and we know that this is a minimum value because a is greater than 1. So the last thing you're going to try is determine if it has a maximum or minimum. So go ahead and look at A, determine that, and then once you're done, you need to go ahead and find the value of that. So again, complete the square and then put it back in vertex form. So let's go ahead and pause here. This is your last one in your notes. And then click play when you're ready to check. Alright, first things first, we're going to subtract 4 from both sides. So have y minus 4 is equal to negative x squared minus 4x. Something I probably want to do here is also factor out the negative, because I want it back in that x squared plus bx form. So negative parentheses x squared plus 4x. And then I'm going to go ahead and complete the square. Half of 4 is 2, 2 squared is 4. So I'm going to be adding 4 to both sides. So negative x squared plus 4x plus 4 is equal to that y minus 4 still. Sorry, we're not going to add to both sides, just that one side. And then we're going to go and factor. So this would be x plus 2 squared. Still have that negative in front. That's going to represent our a. So then I have to get my y by itself, so I'm going to add 4 to both sides. So I get y is equal to negative parentheses x plus 2 squared plus 4. A is equal to negative 1, so that means a is less than 0, which means we have a maximum. And then that maximum value is going to be according to whatever your vertex is. So the vertex is negative 2, comma, we should have actually added 4 to both sides. So this should be plus 8. Which means my max is 8. Okay, that's going to conclude our notes for today. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.